What's up, everybody? I'm Eddie Liger. This is my close friend, Noah Krachevik, and welcome to Midwestern Manifesto. If you're confused, I understand. We're not doing Noah's show tonight because Eddie and I were talking earlier and found out we actually had more than 3 minutes free at the same time. So it was sort of like a miracle, and here we are.
Oh, yeah.
What's up, man?
Not much. I'm excited to be back. I've been traveling on the road. That's why we were unable to do the Midwestern Manifesto show this weekend. So I decided to crush Noah's show with one fist and replace it with this show where Noah and I will be debating.
Yep. You guys probably are unsure what we're going to be debating. Just for clarity's sake, it's going to be the ownership of my cat.
Yes. Which belongs to me 100%. No debate.
I concede.
If you're a materialist, Noah's cat is mine because he claims it's his, but I have it in my basement. So
look, I just don't like the way you're raising it. Exposing it to loud music and drugs and anarchism is just unacceptable.
You're just a square, authoritarian, totalitarian.
Precisely. I don't know what I'm talking about. We got a really cool night, I think, planned for tonight. We're going to talk about Trump and J.D. Vance, who, by the way, surprised me because he seems so soft. But Trump and J.D. Vance basically cooking Zelensky alive in front of all of American media. And we're going to take a whole bunch more, talk about a whole bunch more. We're going to do it after what usually is the intro video. But this time we're going to play a new one because really, when it gets down to it, we're in a period of approaching crises in our country. Wages can't keep up with the price of things, and people don't have any other option left but to fight back against the ruling class, preventing us from living a stable life. And so if you're in that place and you feel like you need to fight back too, get organized, join the Communist Party.
In Le Mans, the twilight of the reckoning, when the shadows grow across the fields of light, where the tide flows to the whisper in the wind, there's sunset, won't fade away. Rising from the dust, all the souls are called from the valleys and the mountains. They stand tall. The time is to come to face the truth and find the narrow path that is drawn by faces like
the red tide's rolling and revealing the sin. Under the moonlight, the judgment begins. Rise from the ashes, let redemption unfurl. It's the end of the line in this broken world. On Judgment Day we see the light, a golden path shining bright, guiding through the
rise, brother, don't be late. Your country waits, your country waits. Rise, comrade, on your gate. No time to waste, no time to waste.
rise, brother, don't be late. On your gate, your country waits. Rise, comrade, for your fate. Will it be forged by what you make?
Rise, brother, don't be late. Your country waits, your country waits.
All right, we're back. Shout out to Jesus Motorcycle for that sweet promotional video for the ACP. He's pushing out some awesome stuff. Unfortunately, everything he touches turns to gold except for his old computer that he gave me because it crashed out after 1 week. So I'm back on my iPad again, once again trying to raise money so that I can have a computer. But either way, that video is pretty great. If we had communism, it wouldn't be a struggle for me to buy a computer. So there's even more motivation to join the ACP. Don't do it for the country or your family or your kids. Do it for me specifically.
All of us are really doing this so Eddie can have more things.
That's essentially the point. Yeah, I want to, they told me about how Stalin lived in a giant mansion, that was made out of his enemies' skulls while everybody else, was eating only one rat a day. And I thought that sounded like my ideal society. So that's when I became a communist. And here we are.
I'm in it for the baby eating mostly.
Right. Yeah, that's good too.
Yeah.
You guys don't underestimate their meat. There's a reason that we eat veal. It's a dark joke.
What happened to this show already?
I wasn't going to organize, but I guess I will now.
Well, you get to live in a castle made of skulls. I can't see a better reason than that, really.
No.
So yeah,
and Marx said utopias were impossible.
So yeah, we're not gonna do the call-in show tonight, but don't worry. If you guys bug Eddie enough, he's gonna join us for next week's call-in show, and he'll take your calls with us. It'll be great.
Absolutely. This guy will be joining us as well, answering calls, talking to enraged Ukrainians. So it should be a fun time.
Yeah, I was sort of watching the chat, and I saw someone said like they have a liberal dad who's like super voted like cheerleading for World War III right now, and that's really sad. I've noticed the same sort of thing. Like now that Trump is in office, all of the liberals are like getting hardcore behind the Nazis in Ukraine, right? I had to have a discussion with the one guy who's kind of new on my crew today, because he was like, well, didn't Russia just invade Ukraine? I'm like, do you think it was like unprovoked? I mean, what are you saying? Like, there's a whole history that led up to the special military operation. It doesn't even begin with, the Nazi coup. It begins way before that. And he was sort of, he was doing the whole like, oh, I saw this on the news. So like, he's like, yeah, but like, they still, they like, the Ukraine's been this sovereign country forever and ever, and now they're just taking parts of it. I'm like, well, kind of hasn't. Ukraine's a bunch of mishmashed places put together, right? Like it's the name Ukraine literally is borderland, and these beginning in the Soviet era really develop into a people, and so it's always been sort of contested territory, basically. He's beginning to come around though, so yeah.
That's good. Some people just got to learn the history. And thank you, Johnny, for the super chat, the Canadian money that will soon be American US dollars when Trump launches the invasion of Canada next week. Appreciate you.
Fingers crossed.
To buy a new computer. But yeah, there was someone who Carlos and I used to organize with in college who just made their profile picture recently. I stand with Ukraine, and we both saw it and sent it to each other like the same time. It's like, how are you invested in politics and you still have this position? But they don't know the history, because the media outlets that they watch isolate the 2022 invasion from the historical events which preceded it, which is, what bourgeois media and bourgeois scholars always do. Marx and Engels talk about that a lot in the German ideology written in the 1800s, how you're able to lie about politics and certain things by divorcing them from the historical events which preceded and created them. So I'm sure if we were, still in contact with this person, if they hadn't moved away, they probably wouldn't have this position because we'd be able to educate them about what's going on. But when people, don't have anybody who can share the truth with them or aren't following any media outlets that are actually telling the truth. And they're a left-wing progressive person who's trying to help fight injustice for moral reasons or whatever. It's very easy to fall into this. And we're seeing that now with a lot of liberals because, you know, Trump and J.D. Vance, rather, were being very mean to Zelensky. They were being very rude. It's like, oh, they have no decorum. They have no civility. You know, what's wrong with them? And it's like, you guys have this so backwards. Like, Joe Biden has been funneling money into a corrupt Nazi regime and continuing a proxy war and not allowing a peace agreement to happen for 2 years. He's refused to engage with any criticism, refused to even give any kind of pushback to Zelensky and his regime, just giving them a blank check to take as many U.S. taxpayer dollars as they want, preventing them from signing a peace agreement. And Trump came in and said this isn't going to continue. He said that publicly in front of the American media in the Oval Office. He told Zelensky that, you know, this is ridiculous and you're not going to continue to get a blank check from America. So, you know, the liberal reaction to that is just, for those of us who have a coherent understanding of what's going on, it's just wild, but, you know, it makes sense based on how they see the world.
I mean, it always boils down to that. Like, we have to defend these Nazis from these evil Russians, right? And even when, they can't even deny that they're Nazis these days. They don't even try. But they're like, well, that Russia still invaded. And it's like, look, like Eddie was saying, you can't take a situation and give us an arbitrary starting point for how it develops. You need to really look at everything that goes into making it what it is. I really wish they wouldn't, like, Google wouldn't have gone through and rooted out a bunch of Scott Ritter's videos, because we did an interview with him last year on this subject, and it was fantastic. By the way, shout out to Scott. I was talking to him earlier, and he was asking if white collar professionals like him are still allowed in the Communist Party. We said we'd make an exception.
That's hilarious.
No, he's an awesome guy. He really is. And he's been right on about this entire conflict because he's so familiar with the region. And when the mainstream media just takes history and gives you just this tiny slice, it automatically makes it lose something. You don't get that sort of more full analysis that you need to understand it. Like, for example, the Communist Party in Russia had been pushing for intervention since before the special military operation happened. They did as soon as the coup happened and the Nazis began banning the Russian language. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Ukraine, that doesn't sound that terrible for the Nazis to do, but a very large chunk of people living in Ukraine speak Russian as their primary language, especially in the East. And this leads to the secession of the Donetsk People's Republic, right? The Donbass, whom these Nazis were killing, just straight out killing. What really ends up happening is Russia steps in on their behalf in what amounts to a civil war. I don't know.
Yeah, let's play the video and react to it and break it down step by step here. So Noah's got to play it because I'm on my iPad. I see an interesting comment here, TG, and you can comment on this too if you want, Noah, but he says, the empire called it off. They just waited for the Trump administration to performatively announce it. I don't know if I agree with that, but it's definitely a possibility. It's definitely something that's crossed my mind, or maybe because Politico and some of these outlets that are just straight up, mouthpieces for the owning class we're coming out and publishing articles saying that the war is not going good for Ukraine. They gave up on this lie, this propaganda talking point that Ukraine was winning. So that made me think maybe, they saw the writing on the wall and they just waited for the Trump administration to actually say it. Because you also had neocons like Marco Rubio falling in line with what Trump's position was on Ukraine. So I definitely think that's a viable option.
It does bring up a good point, though, Eddie, that our ruling class is not all on the same page right now.
Right.
So we have this sort of what the rightists call the globalists, right? The sort of supranational imperialists, and we have the development of a bourgeois nationalist section now. I sort of look at Trump as a bourgeois nationalist the way FDR was a bourgeois nationalist, right? Just with a different sort of branding to him. And so
you would confuse a lot of DSA members by saying that, but it's an accurate comparison.
I'm sure I do. But they're confused frequently. So what are you going to do? But this seems to be like going into an open conflict, and we can sort of look into the whole creation of the Doge, right? And destroying USAID as part of that. Now, they're also doing a lot of really negative things with this, especially regarding labor relations. But I think that they're sort of stripping of the USAID is part of their internal struggle within the capitalist class. So it puts us communists in an interesting position, right? To gain prominence, just like the last time there was a giant conflict within the ruling class, and take advantage of that, showing people that, neither section of this ruling class is able to help us. If we want to improve our lives, we need to do so our damn selves. All that said, though, let's take a look at this video.
For Putin, it's very tough for me to make a deal with that kind of hate. He's got tremendous hatred, and I understand that, but
You
I
should
can
make
tell
a
you
full
the other
circle.
side isn't exactly in love with, him either. So it's not a question of alignment. I'm aligned with the world. I want to get the thing set. I'm aligned with Europe. I want to see if we can get this thing done. You want me to be tough? I could be tougher than any human being you've ever seen. I'd be so tough. But you're never going to get a deal that way. So that's the way it goes. All right, one more question.
I want to respond to this. So look, for 4 years in the United States of America, we had a president who stood up at press conferences and talked tough about Vladimir Putin, and then Putin invaded Ukraine and destroyed a significant chunk of the country. The path to peace and the path to prosperity is maybe engaging in diplomacy. We tried the pathway of Joe Biden of thumping our chest and pretending that the president of the United States' words mattered more than the president of the United States' actions. What makes America a good country is America engaging in diplomacy. That's what President Trump is doing.
Can I ask you?
Sure.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. So he occupied our parts, big parts of
I want to stop it right here. What Vance says here is interesting to me. Because you notice he talks about the actions of the president being important, more important than their words. I mean, we could, debate over whether giving U.S. tax dollars to these Nazis is actions or not. But it seems to me that he's also implying that some sort of military action would have been better. I don't know. What do you think, Eddie?
Yeah, I don't know about that. I had something different to say. That's not really where my brain was, but I watched Zelensky's whole interview. It was like 3 hours long with Lex Friedman the other day, because I hadn't actually listened to that much from him. I know the conditions that brought him to power, and I know about the different political forces in Ukraine, but I hadn't listened to him speak that much directly because it was mostly just like liberal propaganda. But I came away from that podcast thinking he was such an insufferable human being and such a terrible at making the argument. And he won't even let he wouldn't let Lex Friedman say that Russians are human beings, that they're people. He said that, they're people just like your people. And he's like, no, I look at them as animals because they're against this. And the Lex would try to bring up some of the factors that provoked it. No, that you say you're, all of it's Putin propaganda. Like, he is the most, he's such a fucking liar, and the lies are so bad. It's like, how are you not embarrassed of yourself? So to watch him get called on his bullshit to his face, regardless of who it's by, it was cool to see. I'm sick of this guy, completely tired of him.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more.
Of Ukraine, part of East and Crimea. So he occupied it on 2014. So during a lot of years, so I'm not speaking about just Biden, but those time was Obama, then President Obama, then President Trump, then President Biden, now President Trump, and God bless, now President Trump will stop him. But during 2014, nobody stopped him. He just occupied and took. He killed people. You know what the contact line?
2015.
2014.
2014 and 2014.
2014.
Yeah. So
I was not here.
Yeah, but
That's exactly right.
Yes, but during 2014 till 2022.
You gotta love Trump's ego,
this-
man. You gotta love that. He's like, oh, 2014, I wasn't here.
Well, he's right. It was Obama who overthrew Ukraine's government.
That's very true.
The situation the same. The people have been dying on the contact line. Nobody stopped him. You know that we had conversations with him, a lot of conversation, my bilateral conversation, and we signed with him, me, like a new president. In 2019, I signed with him the deal. I signed with him, Macron and Merkel, we signed ceasefire. Ceasefire, all of them told me that he will never go. We signed him with gas contract. Yes, but after that, he broken this ceasefire. He killed our people and he didn't exchange prisoners. We signed the exchange of prisoners, but he didn't do it. What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about.
All right, real quick before he gets into this, because it's really good. I want to point at where Zelensky begins. He says, like, yes, he occupied, he killed people. Why? Right? They never get to why that happened. They never get to the breaking of peace deals before this, right? They never get to Minsk. Those types of things are always ignored, and that always bothers me.
This is true. Zelensky talks like he's trying to win a Reddit argument, LOL. It's because the shit you read about Ukraine on Reddit and what this guy's saying come from the same places. It comes from the National Security State and the U.S. State Department. This is why we say State Department talking points, use that phrase. When USAID shut down, there were like thousands of Reddit accounts and Reddit pages, moderator accounts who were moderating all these pages that also got shut down, right? The CIA is heavily invested in the internet, and they basically have this app Reddit completely controlled, which is part of the reason Reddit is such a joke and nobody trusts it. So, the same nonsensical, ahistorical talking points that are being pushed on Reddit are the ones that Zelensky uses, and that's why he's so insufferable. It's like, you're the president of a country, dude, and you're reading off like these Reddit talking points that anybody who actually knows the situation knows are lies. But thank you for the super chat, Pranav, and also Red Maze. Thank you for the $25 super chat, brother.
Yeah, thank you guys. I think, like, here's my thing, and I was just watching an interview with Putin where he goes, look, Zelensky is good at one job, and that's acting, right? He's reading the script that's been prepared for him. He was an actor, but that's a lot different than being like, he's playing the leader of a country, right? But that's a lot different than actually being that person. And when it gets right down to it, when he's in the room with Trump, who is nowadays used to that role, like used to being that person, that the leader of the country, you can just kind of tell that they're not speaking the same language. Right? Like while Zelensky is reading his script basically and doing a good job acting, Trump just kind of shoots from the hip. He says what he's thinking is politically smart rather than what was written for him by the intelligence and his teams and whatever else. That's just
Trump should have told him, you're fired. would have been a
about
cherry.
the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media. Right now, you guys are going around and forcing conscripts to the front lines because you have manpower problems. You should be thanking the president for trying to bring it into this conflict.
Have you ever been to Ukraine that you say what problems we have?
I have been to.
Count once.
I've actually.
It's so stupid, bro. You guys are picking up people in vans and shipping them to the front lines. You guys are drafting disabled people and 18-year-olds and sending them to go die while rejecting any kind of peace agreement. Have you ever been to Ukraine? If you come to Ukraine, you see Putin real bad and you give us money. Not even money. Give us credit. We will pay you back. I'm so sick of this guy.
Yo,
Russia, depose him. Just kidding.
I
Kidding
hate JD Vance with a burning passion, right? Like I read his stupid book, like pretending neither here nor there. I do not trust Peter Thiel, and he's always been Peter Thiel's kind of little, toady. But right there, I really liked him saying that. He's like basically saying, you mean to tell me you're going to come into the Oval Office right now and try to like play this little sob story when instead you should be thanking the president for offering to save your country from utter destruction, which is where it's headed if you keep sending innocent conscripts to die in front of Russian guns, right? Like you have to understand where the Nazis are at. People there do not want this war other than the Nazis. And the Nazis are not a majority, they never have been, right? So they need to force people to fight. They're slaughtering an entire generation of men for this, for a war they can't win.
Right. And we should be clear. I mean, it is also, it's cool to see, but it's also a propaganda stunt by Trump and JD, which is pretty ingenious because they know, especially their base, but much of America in general is tired of fueling this proxy war. They're tired of funding it. They've gained an idea of the history of the conflict and what's actually going on, and how NATO has provoked it. And they're, tired of it. And like I said, we had this like drooling, old, demented man as our president the last few years who wouldn't listen to any criticism, any reason. It was just writing blank checks for this country while, his handlers and the State Department ran the show. So they know that, they knew Americans were going to eat this up. And what is Zelensky? Zelensky is a pawn of the United States empire and NATO. And as Carlos says oftentimes, sometimes it's better to be an enemy of the U.S. empire than it is to be a friend, because they used Zelensky for many years as a tool to bash Russia. Trump himself, funded this proxy war without doing anything like this for 4 years in the office. But now that the U.S. is losing, now that they know Russia is going to win the war, and now that public opinion has turned against it, Trump comes in to be the hero, and scold Zelensky and basically use Zelensky for this propaganda stunt against the war. And Zelensky's got to be like, you're the one who put me in here, but I don't feel bad for him at all. You made yourself a pawn of the U.S. and NATO. You sent an entire generation of Ukrainians who you were supposed to protect to fight and die for NATO, and now NATO is throwing you to the wolves. Like, get bit. I don't know what you want me to say. Nobody feels bad for this guy anymore.
I mean, that's what's literally always happened to all of the allies of our ruling class. You know what I mean? Like how do you not see that coming? How do you not learn from history?
Did you know Trump made a comment about that?
Did he really?
When Zelensky got there, he's like, oh, he wore his nice outfit, or he dressed up for the occasion. Like, roasted him. Zelensky, he's still trying to, pretend like he's at war, like he's one of the soldiers. It's so fucking stupid.
Watched and seen stories, and I know what happens is you bring them on a propaganda tour, Mr. President. Do you disagree that you've had problems?
Hey, what does that sound like though, Noah? What does that sound like? I don't want to go visit your country because you bring them on a propaganda tour. Oh, you mean like when you two jackasses went and kissed the wall in Israel? And then
Oh, I was just about to say that same thing.
You know what the military-industrial complex said about Ukraine? That they want it to be a big Israel. So why do you support one and not the other?
100%. I was going to say that same thing. Disgusting.
Respectful to come to the Oval Office of the United States of America and attack the administration that is trying to prevent the destruction of your country.
A lot of questions. Let's start from the beginning.
Sure.
First of all, during the war, everybody has problems. Even you, but you have nice ocean. And
okay, hold on real quick. I just want to point out Zelensky's pouting little kid body language. Like he's like,
as he's trying to say that that Russia's gonna invade the U.S. Well, they're gonna come get you next. Like, no, they're not, because we're not run by Nazis right on their border killing their people.
Right, like that. Russia invading America is ridiculous. Again, like Eddie said, we're not run by Nazis right on their border killing Russians. But yeah,
don't feel now, but you will feel it in the future. God bless.
You don't know that.
God bless. You God bless. You will not have a war.
Don't tell us what we're going to feel. We're trying to solve a problem. Don't tell us what we're going to feel.
I'm not telling you.
Because you're in no position to dictate that. Remember this. You're in no position to dictate what we're going to feel. We're going to feel very good.
Feel influence.
We're going to feel very good and very strong.
You know, this part was interesting to me too, because since we've joined the party, and with the help of Kyle Pettis, who has a lot of negotiating experience, there's a lot of negotiating that goes on. There's a lot of like making deals and saying, we'll do this for you if you do that for us. And, this would be like us going up to the Democratic Party and being like, why don't you guys give us all your money and like support all of our efforts with a blank check to, do what we want to do politically. There's no reason for the Democratic Party to agree to that, and for forever, Biden hadn't pushed back at all. He had just said, yes, of course we will give Ukraine a blank check. Of course we will continue fighting a proxy war with Russia, because he believes that, U.S. State Department, U.S. ruling capitalist class logic that says Russia is a competitor and therefore needs to be destroyed and needs regime change. He, never, ever, ever questioned that logic. And, at this age, he doesn't have the mental capacity to even do so. And it's completely ridiculous, though. Like in an actual negotiation, Ukraine has nothing. They have lost the war. The U.S. has given them endless money. It's led to no success, only prolonging the war and leading to more deaths. What leverage does he have over the U.S. to say, yeah, you have to continue giving us all your taxpayer money? It's like childlike negotiation.
The only possible leverage they have, right, is one, turning against them rhetorically, which is weak. That would have had to be played first. Two, the sort of ability to allow our financial elites to use their country as a colony, which they already gave, right? And
I did a video on that.
And three, their military strategic position, which they've also already given. So they have nothing. I don't know.
You're right now not in a very good position. You've allowed yourself to be in a very bad position, and he happens to be right about it.
From the very beginning of the war.
You're not in a good position. You don't have the cards right now. With us, you start having cards. Right now, you don't. You're playing cards. You're playing cards. You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III. And what you're doing is very disrespectful to the country, this country. That's back to you. Far more than a lot of people said they should have.
Have you said?
Oh, man. Look, he's right about this. Zelensky, and let's face it, our elites too, are gambling with World War III. And Zelensky's hearing this, and he's looking like, again, like a pouting child, like he's pulling faces, and Trump's just like, you're being very disrespectful. I don't know. I just kind of liked that part. That's all.
Thank you once. This
A lot
entire
of
meeting?
times.
No, in this
Even
entire meeting,
today.
you said thank
Even
you.
today.
You went to Pennsylvania and campaigned for the opposition in October. Offer some words of appreciation for the United States of America and the president who's trying to save your country.
Please, you think that if you will speak very loudly about the war, you
He's
can...
not speaking loudly. He's not
Yeah.
speaking loudly. Your country's in big trouble.
Can I
Wait a
answer?
minute. No,
Can
you've
I
done a lot
answer?
of talking. Your country is in big trouble.
I know.
You're not
I
winning.
know.
You're not winning this.
I know.
You have a damn good
You
chance of
put
coming
me
out
here, you
okay
son of
because
a
of
bitch.
us.
Mr. President, we are staying in our country.
Putin's about to put me in a meat grinder. Please just fly me out. I don't care about the country anymore. I want to live in Miami. I'm tired of this shit. I don't even care.
Oh man.
Staying strong from the very beginning of the war. We've been alone, and we are thankful. I said thanks
You haven't
in
been
this
alone.
cabinet.
You
and
haven't
not
been
only
alone.
in this
We
cabinet.
gave you, through
I
this
said
stupid president, $350 billion.
You
I can't believe he said we've been alone. From the beginning, this has been an American proxy war. America, our NGOs, our politicians, etc., were there pushing the Nazi coup. They pushed the Nazis into power. We even have leaked phone calls with what's her face?
Newland. And
Newland,
Jeffrey
thank you,
Pine.
Victoria Newland, literally like speculating and picking who was going to be in charge, right, in power. So the idea that they've been alone is ridiculous. The idea that Trump would even be under that misconception is even more ridiculous.
Well, that's because the only way for Zelensky to save his own skin and come out on top is to get NATO involved, to literally start World War III. This is why they launched that missile into Poland to try and make it look like, Russia was attacking a NATO country. They've been trying to for over a year now to draw NATO in and start World War III, which is why, in some ways, Trump was the pro-peace candidate this year. Obviously, he's not pro-peace. He's pro-war in all these different ways. But when it came to this one singular issue, Joe Biden was just, writing a blank check for this guy as he actively tried to start World War III, to light the match. That would be the flame of World War III. So hopefully this, interaction here means Ukraine will finally be cut off. A peace agreement will finally be signed. The parts of Ukraine that are overwhelmingly Russian want to join Russia will join Russia. West Ukraine can be West Ukraine. And there we have it. No more war.
Yeah, I think that's something that when we talk about the proxy war, people don't really think about anymore. Like if you try to put your shoes in or yourself in the shoes of the Nazi leadership in Ukraine, right? The only way for you to have any chance at getting even something more than you have now is to start World War III,
Yep.
which would mean all of this was for nothing for them. And so it's not hard to see that that's what they want. I never said I thought I'd say thank God for Trump, but thank God for Trump catching on to that and at least wanting to stop that from happening. Like Eddie said, he's a warmonger in other ways, but at least that.
The real question is, once Zelensky finally holds elections, are we going to run Slava for president of Ukraine? Yes.
Absolutely. Yes, of course. And she'll win in a landslide because I assume there'll only be 9 people left there anyway.
Yep. You're up.
We gave you military equipment, and you men are brave, but they had to use our military. If you didn't have our military equipment, this war would have been over in 2 weeks.
In 3 days, I heard it from Putin. In 3 days, this is something
Maybe
new.
less.
In 2 weeks, of course, yes.
It's going to be a very hard thing to do business like this. I tell you.
Just say thank you.
I said a lot of times
Except that there
to American people.
Except that there are disagreements, and let's go litigate those disagreements.
Right now, Vance is just basically saying, okay, Zelensky, tell Trump you're his bitch.
And then do what we say.
Rather than trying to fight it out in the American media when you're wrong. We know that you're wrong.
But you see, I think it's good for the American people to see what's going on.
I understand, sir.
I think it's very
understand.
important. That's why I kept this going so long. You have to be thankful. You don't have the
I'm
cards.
thankful.
You're buried there. Your people are dying.
tell you
You're
again,
running
I
low
know.
on soldiers.
Don't-
Listen,
don't please,
you're running
Mr.
low
President.
on soldiers. It would be a damn good thing.
Mr.
And then you tell us, I don't want a ceasefire. I don't want a ceasefire. I want to go and I want this. Look, if you could get a ceasefire right now, I tell you, you take it so the bullets stop flying and your men stop getting killed.
Of course, we want to stop the war.
But you're
I
saying
said-
you don't want a
But I
ceasefire.
said to you,
I want a
with
ceasefire
guarantees.
because you'll get a ceasefire faster than an agreement.
Ask our people about ceasefire, what they think.
That wasn't
doesn't
with
matter
me.
for you what-
That
what
wasn't
this
with me.
means. It
That was with
wasn't you.
a guy named Biden who was not a smart person.
This
That
is
was
your,
with,
this
that was
is
with
your
Obama.
president. It was your president.
Excuse me. That was with Obama, who gave you sheets, and I gave you javelins.
Yes.
I gave you the javelins to take out all those tanks. Obama gave you sheets. In fact, the statement is Obama gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. You got to be
He's
more
bragging
thankful.
about perpetuating the war, which also shows how ridiculous this is. You know, like they used this guy as a puppet to launch javelins at Russia, and then once they lost, they're like, "Hey, you son of a bitch, why'd you do that? We're not giving you any more javelins." And that's
Right, like Trump's complaining about sending American tax dollars to Ukraine, and then he's just like, no, but I'm the one who did it. I gave you javelins. By the way, look at I think Zelensky caught on to that because look at his face right now. He looks like he's looking at someone on his team like, is this dude serious?
Did Obama send did he send sheets? Is that like a KKK thing? He was sending sheets to the Ukrainians, the right wingers, run around like Django Unchained.
Right, like no, you guys do racism wrong. Like all the banderism, no. Do it the KKK way.
We're gonna introduce a little American racism.
Oh Jesus!
Almost.
Because let me tell you, you don't have the cards. With us, you have the cards. But without us, you don't have any cards.
One more question to Mr. Vice President. I'm sorry.
Vice
Because
President,
it's
you
up to
like
you.
beans on
Because
toast?
the attitudes have to change.
Let me interrupt
What
this
is
to ask you
Russia's
about beans.
ceasefire? What is Russia?
This thing over with.
Oh,
Dang
that's it.
Brits, stay out of it, British. Yeah, that was interesting. I gotta run to the bathroom now. I'll let you talk. Wrap it up.
Sure. Yeah, there's a part in this that I couldn't find. I saw a short clip of it where Zelensky says something under his breath, and knowing fluent Ukrainians, I was able to be told what the translation was. Apparently, he was calling Vance a bitch whore in Ukrainian, which is a common sort of insult, which seems typical, I guess. It's wild to me to think about all of these politicians and super rich people that with all this power, and at the end of the day they're just kind of petty children. I mean, Zelensky saying that, Vance basically trying to like cuck Zelensky publicly and make him feel small, right? None of that seems like real diplomacy to me. But there it is. Mike Davis, no, it's not Paul McCartney's bass, but it is the same model of bass he uses. And I'm also left-handed. So there's that. It's called a Hofner violin bass. But yeah, like the whole thing was just sort of like this, I don't know, childish sort of back and forth where they were, doing it for the media, right? Which I'm not going to lie, like it felt good after years and years of, our Senate chanting Nazi slogans and stuff like that, to really see them like get put in their place. But at the end of the day, I mean, this is a clown show, right? And the fact that there's a clown show going on, edging us towards a possible nuclear Armageddon and the end of the human race that would entail is effing terrifying to me. I don't know.
True, but I don't know that nuclear Armageddon would lead to the end of the human race. I'm kind of Jody Brar-pilled on this issue. Like, it would be horrible. We want to avoid that at all costs.
Malpilled?
Malpilled, yeah. That's where Jody gets that position from. Like, if a nuclear war started, you know, we would still be fighting for communism. It would just be under conditions of capitalism deteriorating in a very violent and damaging, obviously, ecologically and otherwise way. But, you know, it would be a state of complete chaos where, you know, it actually, as morbid as this is, it would provide an opportunity for communist parties. So I don't know. It's not that big of a deal. Obviously, we all agree that we should avoid nuclear war, but I think it is good to keep in mind that even in a nuclear war, that's not the end of humanity or the struggle.
I mean, I'm 100% ready for zombie apocalypse.
We've been preparing for years. Ever since I saw Zombieland, I was like,
"This." Like, you are welcome
time to get ready.
in our bunker any day, Eddie.
Hell yeah.
I'm like half joking, but we have like all kinds of, you know, prepper stuff in our basement, like water purification stuff, body armor, guns, all that stuff, MREs. It's good to be prepared just in case, right? But
I think so. I don't think it's that ridiculous. Like, we all rely on the supermarket, on the Walton family for our food. What if, you know, that food isn't there one day? Or what if they decide to take it away? Or what if they say, you're not going to get any food unless, you know, we put this World Economic Forum implant in your hand that you use to pay for it. You know, you gotta be aware of stuff like that. That's why I think like the community service work that we do, like the doing community gardens and creating community areas, like, you know, people act like, some people like mock that, which is just weird to me. Why are you mocking people doing work in their communities on the internet? Like, really think about that, how big of a piece of shit you are. But like, it is actually like revolutionary in a way. It's not, you know, you need to be doing labor organizing and all this other stuff. You're not going to get a revolution from cleaning up trash, but it's laboring not for profit, but for the community, for the public space that we all have, and to bring the community closer together. And then, you know, in a situation where the system breaks down in a serious way, like, those community groups and locations are going to be essential to survival and political struggle. So I don't get why people hate on community organizing and specifically community service. I mean, I do get it. They're just like bitter people who think we're Nazis, but
they're antisocial and Nazis, and they're horrible people mostly. But it brings up a really good point, Eddie. Revolutions aren't subjective, right? They don't happen because we get everyone to agree that communism is the way to go. They happen objectively, and we subjectively participate in them, right? And let's say that we enter some kind of constitutional crisis. These days, that isn't really that far-fetched. You know what I mean? Let's say that happens and the government begins to fall apart. People already have no faith in it. They have no faith in the media, no faith in the giant corporations, all of this. Who do you turn to?
Midwestern Marx.
Well, who do you turn to when that happens, when it all falls apart? The people you trust. And so all these like anti-communist leftists all over the internet that just run around criticizing everything, or liberals who think like, you know, their amalgamation of a milieu is going to be trustworthy during this, are dreaming. You're going to turn to your neighbors, your coworkers, and the people who have earned your trust. And the Communist Party is interested in bringing these communities together. That's why we say we don't start a community from scratch and go into other people's communities and say, we're going to lead you because you're bad and we're enlightened and we'll tell you what to think, all the good thoughts. No, we build those connections up because when things go bad, you depend on your neighbors. You depend on the organizations you know are there for you when no one else is.
Yeah, the most interesting ones to me are like these dogmatist wreckers who call themselves Leninists or Marxist-Leninists. I'm like, you haven't read Lenin's theory and especially haven't read the history of the Russian Revolution at all. Like, the first revolution wasn't spearheaded or led by the Bolsheviks. Like Noah said, it was just an objective revolution. It was the people rising up against the shitty system. And sure, the Bolsheviks were doing, propaganda and organizing and agitation and stuff like that, trying to move it along. But it happened objectively, and the Bolsheviks were ready for it, and they gave it coherence and a theoretical outlook and all these different things. So if you look at what's happening in the U.S., where you have all these MAGA people who are absolutely furious at the system, it's like these are the objective revolutionary conditions of our country, right? You can agree with DSA and their program as much as you want. Like, that's not where Americans are at. Anti-establishment working class Americans largely, either support Trump or, are indifferent or are, some are third party and a few are still attached to the Democrats because they think they're pro-labor. But for the most part, that energy's in MAGA, but we need to be reaching out to all of these people. And, it's not going to the American people and saying, here's what you need to think. And then they'll go, oh, you're right, I'll overthrow the government now. No, you speak to what they already know. They probably already implicitly want to overthrow the government.
Mhm.
You just can come along and help them understand why they feel that way. And, that they're not delusional for feeling that way, because the whole media apparatus has been designed to gaslight them and tell them, no, actually, you're fine. And if you're not fine, working 40 plus hours a week, you need to go to the pharmacy and take these pills to be normal and to be balanced. Yeah. But anyways,
not to mention that the objective anti-establishment energy sees these sort of like dogmatic wreckers as defenders of the system, right? Like they've divorced themselves so much from the working class and the actual proletariat as it exists that they sort of police working class people and tell them they're evil over like silly things like, if you don't want children to take dangerous hormone drugs and things like that, right? Then you're evil for them. You can't be a revolutionary and you're the enemy. And so what do you think happens when you tell people that? They align against you. They see you saying the same things as the ruling class, and they're never, ever, ever going to trust you.
Exactly. Well, are you ready to shit on Obama? Are you
I don't have that one.
Clock 8 years. Just go to my TikTok account on your desktop and then look for the one that has 1.5 million views. It was pretty recent.
I may not be able to do it. I hope your TikTok isn't logged in on the Institute account.
Is
your TikTok logged in on the Institute account?
You don't need to be logged in. Just search Edward M. Liger on TikTok. If not, I can just send you the link.
Yeah, I got it. I'm looking through it now. You can just talk. Which one are we looking for? Obama, right?
Yeah, it's got 1.5 million. You should see the views in the corner. Thank you, Pranav Simha, for the super chat, a second one. 4th total today. Thank you guys so much. Appreciate it. It's all going to go towards letting me stream from a computer instead of an iPad one day. A boy can dream. This is why people think that the World Economic Forum and BlackRock are communist institutions. Exactly, because they're, draping themselves in progressive rhetoric and rainbow flags that people associate with leftism. And, then they say this is the left. BlackRock and the World Economic Forum are the left, when, really what the left is about at its core, what it's supposed to be about, is opposing those kind of institutions. Now, because they're draping themselves in a rainbow flag, that's just the way that they use to perpetuate themselves. But because of the fact that they're exploiting working class Americans and forcing us to live in an irrational system. Do you need me to find it, Noah, or you got it?
I'm still looking.
Yeah, you should have found it already.
I found one that was 1.3 million, but that doesn't seem like it.
I'm just gonna find it for you.
All right, that works. Yeah, and just send me the link, and we'll do it that way. Sorry, man. I'm too old to understand TikTok, so there we go. I think the Pranav had a point though in the super chat, right? That this is why people think that the World Economic Forum and BlackRock are somehow communist institutions, right? And when people sort of align with them, they go in with the gender ideology and wokeism and all of this. All you're doing is telling them that you align with the ruling class.
All right, I sent it to you.
I'm on it right now. All right. Let's share my screen though, huh? Don't you guys miss Obama? I sure do.
Obama's the reason I have blisters on my feet right now. Don't you guys miss Obama? 8 years, 0 scandals. Well, besides butchering Libya, destroying Syria, increasing drone strikes by over 1,000%, unaliving a U.S. citizen with a drone, refusing to push for single-payer healthcare even with a Democratic supermajority, colluding with the DNC to sabotage the campaign of Bernie Sanders, bailing out the big banks and Wall Street after the 2008 financial crisis. He once wore a tan suit. He bombed civilians in Libya. He armed extremist groups in Syria. He expanded NSA mass surveillance. He failed to help the Flint, Michigan water crisis and even mocked them by drinking water in front of them at a speech given in Flint. Fueled Saudi Arabia's G-side in Yemen, which led to the largest cholera outbreak in history. He gave billions of dollars in weapons to the white and blue country as they launched assaults on Palestinian civilians and children. He orchestrated the 2009 coup of President Manuel Zelaya in Honduras before installing a violent far-right dictatorship. He facilitated the 2014 overthrow of the Ukrainian government, which was backed by right-wing extremists. He prosecuted more whistleblowers under the Espionage Act than all previous presidents combined. He failed to reform policing after the Ferguson riots. He expanded AFRICOM and U.S. military presence in Africa. He allowed gun running to Mexican drug cartels, which resulted in the unaliving of a U.S. Border Patrol agent. He failed to meet the ecological guidelines of the Paris Climate Accords, which he bragged about signing. He allowed the seizure of large parts of Iraq and Syria by right-wing extremist groups. He deliberately misled the public about the attack in Benghazi and Hillary Clinton's involvement. When Obamacare was launched, the website crashed. He allowed American veterans to pass away due to lack of health care stemming from the underfunding of the VA. And he signed the free trade deal known as TPP, which was aimed at outsourcing American jobs. But yeah, other than that, no scandals at all. Obama. Thank you, Michelle, for being a 4-month member. Oh no, a tan suit, absolutely unforgivable. It's amazing how many times I have heard that. Like, I've heard Obama's only scandal was the tan suit. Some liberals really believe that, but I think at this point, most people are at least aware that Obama bailed out the big banks and destroyed Libya. Or maybe not most people when it comes to Libya, but most people are aware of how he dealt with the 2008 financial crisis and that it didn't need to be dealt with that way.
No, it could. And here's the thing, like, with all of these mortgages, if you think about say you're going to make a bailout, you could give all of this money to the people living in these houses, right? And then they could pay the loan. But they didn't do that. Instead, they skipped the people, gave the money to the banks, and the people got kicked out of their homes. That's what happened. And that's without going into like the whole complicated thing of how they were really ripping us off. But that's just like the most obvious thing. One of the things I thought was funny was when they talk about how Obama had no scandals, sometimes they'll bring up that Tucker Carlson like called him like fancy pants or something for using Dijon mustard on a hot dog. And it's like
So Obama was the guy who crashed into the building in that Tim Robinson sketch. Do you know what I'm talking about?
no. You have to explain
you
that.
gotta watch Tim Robinson. There's a hot dog. This is way off the beaten path. I'm gonna ruin it too. There's a hot dog car that crashes into a store, and Tim Robinson, the comedian, is wearing a hot dog suit, and he's like, "Who could have done this?"
yeah, that's on I Think You Should Leave, right?
Yes, yeah, that's Tim Robinson's show. Yeah. But anyways, it's weird how the Democrats really haven't recovered from Obama. You know, I don't know. He also helped create the conditions that allowed for Trump, you know. So I think it's interesting how well that video with Obama scandals did, because, you know, Americans are now aware that he was not this perfect scandal-free president that he was portrayed as. And in fact, he was very awful. When I was making that video, I'm like, holy shit, it's like a scandal for every day the man was in office. He was just like wrecking the country nonstop. But, you know, that kind of... There he is.
Okay? What happened? Did anyone see? Someone drove a hot dog-shaped car through the window.
Driver's gone. Somebody call the cops. We need to find that driver.
They could have killed someone. Whose car is this?
Yeah, come on. Whoever did it. We promise we won't be mad.
Okay, stop it so we don't get copyrighted. We promise we won't be mad. Someone confess. But what was I saying? Yeah, I mean, Obama was the only reason that the party didn't go in the direction of Bernie Sanders, who was like almost the Trump of the Democrats, the guy who was trying to transform the party in a more populist direction. Obama came down with an iron fist and said, no, you're all going to drop out and endorse Biden before Super Tuesday. And Pete Buttigieg didn't want to, because he was still polling pretty well, and Obama gave him a personal phone call and said, no, you're going to drop out. So the neo-libs have had an iron grip on this party, and that's what Barack Obama represents, which is a huge scandal in my mind, a much bigger scandal than when he wore a tan suit, although that was also unforgivable.
Well, yeah, tan suits are terrible. But look, I think there's this sort of
I thought this said, would you no, I'm sorry, I thought it said if it was 1953, would you have preferred to be Stalin's successor? I'm like, obviously I would have run that shit. We would have been on the moon before the US. It would have been amazing if I was running the USSR. Sorry,
Eddie on the moon, derail you. 6. It would have turned out, if Eddie were there, it would have turned out a lot like what's that show where the Soviets win the space race, and so they like detente actually ends up working, and it was really good. What was it called? For All Mankind. And like the Soviet Union and the US like compete and go to the Mars, and it's a cool show. But honestly, there was no one that could have taken his place at the time. When Stalin died, by that time, things had already sort of lined up to where a Khrushchev or someone like him was almost inevitable, unfortunately. And Stalin was complaining about these things a lot, especially towards the end of his life, that the first secretaries were not educated in political economy. They weren't educated in philosophy. And he was saying that the first generation of revolutionaries, they learned from the actual like original text. They were reading Anti-Düring and Capital, etc. But the generation after were reading from primers and pamphlets and learning the gist of things rather than actually educating themselves well enough. and he tried to impose mandatory political economy education, and he got outvoted. And guess who led the block outvoting him? Khrushchev. Khrushchev was all about more realpolitik. He was sort of known as a sleazy politician, even amongst his friends. And that's what ended up happening. Unfortunately, after Kirov was killed, there was nobody that was sort of going to be able to fill Stalin's shoes.
You know what I would have supported? I would have supported a man named Che Guevara taking a raft, because that's what they do in Cuba. Sean Hannity told me so.
Mm-hmm.
He would taking a raft all the
They
way.
use rafts even like on regular streets. They just kind of paddle down real hard.
How Cubans get everywhere because they can't afford gas. Because of the embargo, because of socialism. But I would have had Che Guevara take a raft all the way to Russia, throw Khrushchev out of like, not like a 10th story window, but like a 3rd story window. So he was like, you know, in the hospital for a while, not dead, but like, you know, you can't be a leader in this country, buddy. And then Che Guevara would have launched the Soviet Cultural Revolution, and it would have become the most based shit ever. And there would have been no Sino-Soviet split. And that's what I want. That's what I wish would have happened.
I'll tell you what, I would have went and tapped Evie Elienkov while he was still in school, and gotten him out, because he kind of got forced into being trapped in the academy, believe it or not, and the Soviet academy, not like ours, just so you guys are clear. And I would have taken him into politics. He didn't have a head for it, but if he had somehow been a party actor rather than an academic, I think that things may have turned out differently. He was that brilliant.
Yeah, it's true. He would have been great. I mean, I don't know how he would have been as a politician. Like, that was the thing about Stalin. He was so strong. Same with Lenin. They were just able to make decisions based on democratic centralism and what was needed. And they were so intelligent and well-read as well. You know, I don't know if he would have had the strength plus the brains, but, you know, he certainly would have been better than Khrushchev. But the real problem, the real reason that the USSR fell is because Gonzalo thought hadn't been developed yet. And the Soviet shining path would have led the country to glorious revolution. So, you know, they needed to learn from Peru, but Gonzalo hadn't been born. So
yeah, there was no Hoxhaism yet.
Yo, don't compare Hoxha to Gonzalo. Hoxha
no. Enver Hoxha was actually a very, very fine leader.
He had balls.
He did. It was just, like, I'm more mocking, you know, Americans who call themselves Hoxhaists, as if that's a thing.
Yo, DSA reading list. Can someone link us this?
Please do. Yes.
Maybe try and Google it. No, I don't know. I mean,
we can.
I can't, or my fate. I'll get taken off the stream if I try to do it.
Yeah, I'll look it up.
I need to see this. I wish, actually, this would be a good thing to go over with Carlos.
Introduction to Democratic Socialism readings. Let's see. Okay. I think this is, if this is what we're talking about.
That's funny as shit.
This could be what Ness is talking about. Let's find out. Introduction to Democratic Socialism readings. So, all right, this is it. This is from 2012, though. This might be old. I don't know what this is. Jason Schulman and Joseph Schwartz, Cornel West, Joseph Schwartz, Michelle Rossi, Nancy Holstrom. I doubt this, because this isn't that funny. It's more inside baseball knowledge. Yeah. Like, who knows?
Actually, what you should do is go on X and search DSA reading list in the search bar.
That's a good idea. We don't want to go on our
Have you guys seen Red Star Caucus? They're pushing DSA towards Marxism, Leninism. One of their members is co-chair of DSA. Oh, that's cool. Yeah, there's a lot of there are based DSA members. I won't deny that at all. There are DSA members who like Midwestern Marx. There are DSA members who want to push it towards Marxism, Leninism. I think that's a lost cause. I wish they would just join the ACP because, why would you join a democratic socialist organization, try to make them a Marxist-Leninist organization instead of just joining a Marxist-Leninist organization. But, best of luck to you.
I'm not seeing anything, brother.
Oh man.
Ness, if you can send us a link to that, we'd really appreciate it.
I'm going to take a stab at it. Entertain the fans.
Bad Wolf is asking if we have a reading list anywhere. We've made some years ago. I would update those though. It depends what you're looking to get into. The reading lists for our classes that we put on, they all have different sort of goals in mind, right? So I can give you one I know off the top of my head, which is my Basics of Marxism course, which begins with an essay by William Z. Foster called The Major Principles of Marxist Socialism. That's in a book called History of the Three Internationals. It's hard to find on PDF. If you look on Banned Thought, they have it. Just keep in mind that Banned Thought is a really, really poorly maintained ultra website. And it takes forever for things to load. I promise you it will load. Just give it a minute. And what that does is it gives people a sort of introduction to how Marxist Leninists talk and organically begins myth-busting common narratives. Then we go into Three Sources and Three Components of Marxism by Lenin, which does the same thing. Then Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific by Engels, which is actually taken out of Anti-Düring at first and then added to, which really begins to build knowledge of what Marxism actually is by showing you how it actually develops and making it stand in contrast to what came before it, right? From there, we go to Stalin's Dialectical and Historical Materialism, which is a really, really, really good basic introduction to the nuts and bolts of Marxism. And then we do some extra fun stuff with whatever time we have left.
Nice. Yes. If you join the ACP, of course, we've got a reading list. And people have, you can find that on X. We don't have it on the main page or anything. Maybe we should, but people have tweeted it out, which we're totally cool with, obviously. It's not like that needs to remain internal, unlike my based fitness program. Which you only get access to once you become a based ACP comrade. But
see, or you could get early access like I do, but you have to have already been friends with Eddie, so I don't know if that'll work out for you guys.
I think the idea of pushing for MLism within the DSA is the cooperative as a mass org. I mean, yeah, they should just filter those people to the ACP, though, because what's their long-term plan? Do they actually think that they're going to be able to transform that party that's, controlled by USAID really into another, State Department organizations? They really think they're going to transform that into a vanguard party, and, everyone who's already in it is just going to stay in it and be okay with that. What's the long-term goal? When we did when the infrared community did Takia and CPUSA, it was based upon, well, for one, we had a plan. We either return CPUSA to its historical roots, the party that it once was, or, we start a new party once the leadership blocks us and breaks their own constitution, and, people can come on board. And that's what we did. But, DSA has never historically been a Marxist-Leninist party. There's no Marxist-Leninist roots to return to.
They've always been anti-communist.
Right. It was founded as a SOC-Dem party, and, I don't think we should really expect it to be anything different. It's the same way I feel about, entryism into the Democratic Party. Yeah, they have a lot of members, but, are you going to they're in that party because it is the way it is. And the party wasn't founded to be a democratic socialist party. It was founded to be liberal bullshit. So I don't know.
Yeah,
But,
no, that's a
best of
really
luck
good
to
point.
them. I'm
Like,
not against them, but I just don't think it's it doesn't seem like a very strategically good use of time when something like the ACP now exists. Maybe years ago, but
they are going to waste your time and energy is what they're going to do.
that's what all those parties do. That's their objective, is to be a house of mirrors where you just spend all this time thinking eventually something will change, and it never does until you're, burnt out.
100%. And that's literally why the ruling class runs them the way they do, right? Is to keep you going and distracted until you burn out and quit. People joined the DSA back in the day for two reasons. One, they got sort of pseudo-radicalized by the Bernie Sanders movement, right?
Yeah.
And as Bernie sells out, they go, oh, these guys are revolutionaries, and then they burn out. Or two, there was nothing else going on, right? But both of these types of people by now have a real option. The American Communist Party is here now, right? I also want to clarify one thing about back in the old party. We were also trying to work within the old party here with Midwestern Marx. And it was kind of funny to like run into Infrared and meet them and go, oh, you guys had kind of the same idea we did. Like, let's see if we can return this party to its former glory, right? It was
I was basically doing Takia just on my own. And we had talked about that, we just didn't tell the audience to do it, but the audience was already doing it because we had a lot of audience members in CPUSA, and of course they agreed with us that the party was an appendage of the Democrats.
Right. And they weren't allowed to say anything about it because they would, I mean, look what happened to me, right? You get blackballed, you get smeared, you get people literally calling themselves your comrades, trying to ruin your life.
Joe Sims hits on your mom. It's crazy. They do all sorts of weird shit over there. Can the ACB field candidates? Yeah, actually, Noah's the mayor of Ohio.
Yep. That's true.
But we only do it when we're confident we can win, like Chris Halali.
Right. I was a write-in candidate without any competition, so it was really easy.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 6 people in all of Ohio.
Yes, I'm the mayor of my house.
Believe it or not, the former mayor was a dog.
Is that real?
No.
Dude, I don't know. There have been like horses who have led countries. Caligula appointed one of his horses. I could see Trump doing that with like a dog.
Yeah. By the way, one thing I actually liked about Biden was he had 2 dogs that would not stop biting Secret Service members.
They have like a long family history of dog abuse. Dude,
do they
you
really?
See that Chuck Todd video? Here, we should react to this before we end. I'll pull it up.
Okay.
I'll be right back, everyone.
Oh, I'm excited to see this Chuck Todd video. I had no idea the Biden family were abusing their dogs. That's messed up, man. We have actually, what's funny, we have a portrait of Bill Clinton's cat, Socks the cat. My sister painted it for us, for my wife and me for like our 10th anniversary or something. I forget what it was, but it was because like years ago I had randomly told her that the only Clinton I like is that cat. And so she like did this thing like, what if the cat had been the president? And so that painting's up in my living room right now.
All right, check this out, Noah. This is from your buddy Lionel, who you were on RT with.
Oh, I loved that guy.
It was so good. I don't know how he found it. It was on some obscure podcast that he did with Steve Schmidt, the Lincoln Project guy, which every time I see something like that and I see the views that they're getting, I'm like, these people would not be able to do what we do. They're all propped up by money, and they get a fraction of the views that we get with zero money, where we're barely able to support ourselves because we actually,
number one, he shouldn't have run for president.
Live off the views that we get and the stuff that we actually put out, not these corporate think tanks. But anyways, thank you, Zero Cult Leader. Appreciate you, brother. Love the super chats, y'all. This is Chuck Todd talking to Steve Schmidt of the Lincoln Project, and they really offer some good criticisms of the Democrats here, but especially the Biden family. Not just for the abusive dogs, which, I learned about well into Biden actually being president, that his dogs had always been biting people, which is the fault of the owners. But his family life is also messed up, as, Chuck Todd, former CNN guy, right, says here, MSNBC, whatever the hell.
Look, if you own dogs that are biting people, there's a problem in your household.
Yeah. Right, and
anyway.
especially if you have unlimited money to train them. Like, what? How is that even
that's what got to me. Like, they have millions upon millions upon millions of dollars. How do they not hire people to train their dogs properly? I thought it was like a funny comment on, just how little they care about anything.
It matters. And something one of my buddies told me, a really good friend who I respect a lot, who we agree on a lot politically, not everything, of course, but he voted for Trump this year. And he said, something nobody talks about is like all of Trump's kids, they could be assholes or disgusting or egomaniacs or whatever, but they're all pretty successful. Whereas Biden's kids look at them and he's like, that says a lot about a person. I'm like, you know what? I don't think that's what being president or what politics is all about, the personality stuff, but that is very true. That says a lot about the Biden family that, his kids are like that and his dogs are like that.
I was just talking to a coworker today about Trump's kids, and we were kind of like feeling sorry for Barron. Like, imagine the pressure Barron must be under, right? Because yes, like, Don Jr. is relatively successful, but Ivanka's sort of disappeared, right? What was that her name? Ivanka, his daughter?
Yeah.
She sort of disappeared with Jared Kushner because they were a little too libby, right? And then Eric is a dum-dum, let's face it. Like, I feel like Trump's hopes are really pinned on Barron. And you can tell he's kind of hard on his kids. Like, he seems like the kind of dad that, like, would straight up be like, no, Eric, you're a disappointment.
I think he was a little pissed when Elon's son was being a shithead in the Oval Office and Elon wasn't doing anything.
Oh, yeah. Like, you could tell that, like, that he was like, are you for real, Elon? And by the way, did you also, did you see that video of when Elon got off the plane and straight up just left his kid? Just left him, like, walked off. The kid's like playing around and hopping off. And Elon's just zoop, done.
He is such a disgusting creature.
He really is. Anyway, let's watch this video.
Time for them to move on from Schumer. But this is why I go back and say the Democratic parties, Joe Biden never should have been there in the first place. Right. Number one, he shouldn't have run for president. I completely got so angry at Joe Biden, the man, when I read the transcript of the Hunter Biden trial. And when I realized that not one, not two, but three Biden children, and I count Bo's widow, were all dealing with drug problems in 2018. And Joe Biden said, now's a perfect time to run for president because who cares about our family? I have to tell you something about Joe Biden. There's this mythology about Joe Biden that the man cared so much. It's all bullshit. This man supposedly cared so much about his family that he commuted every day. Guess what? This man cared so much about his political career that he commuted every day, right? Like I could take the same fact and it created a myth, and he did it for 40 years, God bless him, that he was this incredible family man. And instead, what he really was a craven political animal that it was desperate. The man considered or ran for president every 4 years he was eligible. You know why he didn't run in 76? He wasn't 35 yet. That's the only reason.
I literally made a room gasp full of people. And I prefaced what I said that made them gasp with this. And I said, literally, I take a backseat to nobody in a country of 340 million people of my criticism of Donald Trump. Nobody, right? And I don't think it's polemic criticism. I think I have been correct. And I think I ran not what became the grift, but a political organization that was incredibly effective, right, in beating Donald Trump in 2020, right? The Lincoln Project, before it became, unfortunately, something that pockets 90 cents of every dollar. There's an old saying, right, that every cause becomes a business, right, becomes a racket. But what I said to the group,
let's pause real quick because that was a racket from Jump Street.
Yeah, I think now it's like just become, well, I mean, it was effective as a propaganda arm. And I think what he's saying is afterwards it became something where the owners of the project are just keeping it going so that they can take 90 cents per dollar. Like, I think when he was running it, it probably was an effective propaganda tool. I'm sure it was also a money-making ploy for him. Like I said, all these people are propped up like these institutions like the Lincoln Project, and their views are shit. Chuck Todd, and this is what's so interesting is Chuck Todd is the former host of Meet the Press, this NBC News, very, very, very liberal show. But he, they can't get like half of the views of even like a channel like ours, in a lot of cases. And yet they're professional political commentators. It's just so ridiculous. It's not a meritocracy in this world, but it's, these guys, it's interesting. They're taking so much joy and like so much personal aggrandizement for telling some very, very, very basic truths to their fellow Democrats. Like I made a room gasp when I told them that Joe Biden is kind of slow. Joe Biden is kind of getting old. Oh, I'm so brave. I told the Democrats that. It's like, holy shit. It's like, that's how far gone the Democratic Party is. That if you don't just completely buy the propaganda line, you make a whole room gasp. Thank you for the super chat, Aquila.
Yeah, thank you. I was about to click it and you clicked it at the same time. Look, mainstream media, you obviously can't get the views we can. You can hire us if you really want to. You just can't tell us what to say.
It's the only
we'll
option.
Bring the views. You guys just bring the money, and that'll be that. Anyway, let's continue on, huh?
Yeah, that made them gasp. I said, I have 5 kids. And if I had to leave 12-year-old alone, and my choices, part of my conservatism, like small c, is like, I just accept that we live in an imperfect fallen world, right? I'm a pragmatic person, right, who tries to be idealistic, right? But it's like working out, right?
More perfect union.
I'm a default pessimist.
Emphasis on the more, right? More perfect union. We're working.
But in that imperfect fallen world, if I had to leave the kids with someone, and my choices are Hunter Biden or Ashley Biden or Don Jr. and Eric and Laura Trump, like I'm dropping the kids off at Don and Eric and Laura's house.
Well, I'll do Eric's house, not Don's house.
Right.
I have a feeling dealing with drug problems in 2018.
Don Jr.
And Joe Biden
just pause.
Widow.
Yeah. Look,
Don Jr. I don't know if he's ever been skiing, but I'm sure he's hit the slopes. But other than that, I agree 100%.
I have kids, and I would never, ever, ever let my kids around a Biden. That would be insane. I would feel comfortable dropping them off at Don Jr.'s house. Absolutely.
You don't think he would introduce them to partying and drugs?
No, I really don't. Do you?
I don't know. I've heard rumors about Don Jr. like in the Coco, but
I know
I definitely trust him more than Hunter Biden. The crap.
I would also assume Trump was into the cocaine as well.
Cocaine.
What was that show with the guy that said that all funny? Hilarious show, New Girl. Have you ever seen that show?
Yeah.
Fantastic show. Billed as like a girly show, but one of the funniest shows I've ever seen. But like, there's a difference between those people that like, it was the 80s. Trump was doing a bunch of cocaine, and being there with kids. Like, Hunter Biden is a legit crackhead. Different, very different bag of bananas there. I don't know.
And sitting on the board of these Ukrainian firms while he runs around, and his father was part of the crime bill that put all these people in jail for smoking drugs like weed, which we could criticize how marijuana is used to quell revolutionary potential and dumb us down, which I think there's validity to that. But the Joe Biden basically just used it, people's dependency on marijuana under an alienating crushing system to throw them in jail and make money for the prison industrial complex, while literally pardoning his son, who's doing a much harder drug and crack and putting people in danger, while supposedly being this upstanding citizen and making all this money. But did you rewind the video on purpose, Noah?
No, I accidentally clicked the line and it fast forwarded it.
Is there anything left? You want to go to the end? I don't know if there's anything left, but
we're
at the very end.
Okay.
Very end. Yeah.
Off at Don and Eric and Laura's house.
Well, I'll do Eric's house, not Don's house.
Right.
I have a feeling Don and Hunter have the same problem. Okay.
For overnight.
No, that was it.
Mm-hmm. Opium is just the other opium of the masses. Yeah, exactly. Someone said, what would happen if drugs became illegal tomorrow? There'd be a revolution. I heard someone say that recently, and I think it's accurate or close to accurate.
I think that during the mid 20th century, our government specifically was interested in research on the effects of drugs in a social setting. Marijuana was a big one, and our government is still responsible for importing marijuana into the country. And it was back then as well. It knew at that time that there was a very, very real threat of revolution, especially from the Black working class, right? MK Ultra had all sorts of different aspects to it, but one of its aspects was different types of marijuana, giving them to students, et cetera, right? And they straight up said they were trying to use it to pacify the generation. And frankly, it worked. And if you fast forward to today, where we're in an even worse crisis than back then, and it's no longer just the Black proletariat in trouble, it's now everybody. And we're no longer as separated as we were by the color line. We now have multiple generations that have grown up without segregation. I don't know if we can say it's a coincidence that legalization of marijuana, even for medical reasons and all of this, happens now.
Or the opioid crisis is the other thing, because I wrote this big essay, which I still, stand by. It was a good essay.
Great essay.
About how basically the use value of opioids was ignored so that they could make a lot of exchange value or profit or money. However, since that, I've been thinking a lot about how planned our mode of production is and how monopolized and centrally planned the healthcare industry is by these corporations. And I'm like, well, wait a second. This opens another door of inquiry. As capitalism has evolved away from free competition and towards more central planning by the bourgeoisie, who's to say they didn't push those opioids because of the use value, not just because they would make all that profit. Obviously, that's a precondition for them selling any product. They got to make money off of it. But what if they thought, we can pacify the population? We can dumb down the population with the opioids. It's something that needs to be investigated. It's something I would need to look into, and I don't know how I would answer that question. But it's definitely very interesting, especially when you know that, as Noah said, not only did they import marijuana, but the CIA, there's 99.9% proof that this happened. They were facilitating the sale of crack cocaine from the Contras, these fascists in Nicaragua who eventually overthrew the Sandinistas, and then the Sandinistas took power back in 6 years, or 6 years later. But in order to fund them, the CIA was shipping crack cocaine over to here and then giving them to drug dealers like Rick Ross, not the rapper, this big drug dealer named Rick Ross in LA, who would then push them in black communities, where they would also set up liquor stores and all this other bullshit. So it was injected into these communities, and that's why another reason why it sucks that there are like so many stereotypes that these disgusting groypers and other right-wingers actually believe about various communities in the U.S. that the CIA has done everything they could to destroy, and drugs have always been a tool of that. And it's so disgusting to me. I don't talk about this a lot now because I'm a disciplined Marxist-Leninist, but I used to be like interested in psychedelics and the therapeutic effects of them and stuff. And, there's a lot of proof that psychedelic drugs like ibogaine or mushrooms, psilocybin mushrooms or LSD can have therapeutic effects depending on the setting that they're used in. Ibogaine is like 75% effective in getting people to quit smoking cigarettes or to quit addictions. No offense.
Wow.
I know cigarettes are good for you. Maybe if you want to quit someday, we'll give you some ibogaine.
But by the way, I'm actually over the next few months quitting smoking, everybody. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
I wish I had my sound effect bar set up. Good job. I'll be there for you to support you during that. And I'll give you some ibogaine. Just kidding. DEA. Just kidding. But anyways, there have been clinics that have used, LSD and psilocybin mushrooms for mental health treatment, and they've never had anyone have a bad trip, which are very real. If you take, for people taking LSD on the streets, they're very common. You have to be very careful with these drugs. And know what you're doing and have, be in a good environment or whatever. But rather than studying them, rather than saying, here's this substance, that comes from the earth or that we've been able to create that produces these effects and trying to see the good that we can get out of it, it was used by the CIA as a mind control drug. It was used for MK Ultra, the most disgusting shit they've ever done. And what they found, was that they can't necessarily completely program someone's mind, but they could destroy people's minds. They could wipe their brains, which, if you don't know, if you haven't read Tom O'Neill's book Chaos yet, is what they did to Jack Ruby, the guy who shot Lee Harvey Oswald, the guy who supposedly shot JFK. His brain was scrambled by one of the MK Ultra doctors right before he was supposed to speak in court, to testify. Or be investigated or whatever. But anyways, you have this like substance, this commodity really, or just, this material substance that could be used for the benefit of humanity, or at least could be studied so we know what it actually is. Instead, studying it is barred because it's illegal, and you can get thrown in jail if you use it. While meanwhile, the CIA is using it for the most evil, horrific, nefarious purposes possible. And I think, if you're a young hippie who's into psychedelics, that's a condemnation of our system. And psychedelics aren't going to be the solution. You're not just going to be able to take acid and fix the world with love. We have to overthrow these people who are using acid to brainwash Vietnamese people and torture them.
No, obviously not. And one of the worst things about it is the fact that people understand like MK Ultra was a thing, etc., but they don't really understand how it worked. That the social engineering of creating hippie drug culture, right? Of creating these big parties that literally CIA doctors were like sitting in back rooms at, like running experiments. Like this was part of it, creating the sort of narratives of like, oh, you don't need to change anything. You just need to take drugs, man. That was all part of it. Creating this sort of ethos that drugs are cool and rebellious, etc. That rises out of the same programs. I think that, I don't know, it's naive to expect the ruling class to have eased off as they were understanding it more. Like you said, like they found out, obviously they can't directly control people's minds like that, right?
Yeah.
But what they can do is direct thoughts in certain ways, like control what we're thinking about, the language we use to think, all of that in bigger processes, like by controlling institutions, the media, etc., right? You're not like literally brainwashing someone by like, you know, you're not a wizard, you're not casting magical spells at them. But when you feed them anti-communist propaganda, for instance, that controls their thoughts, doesn't it? You're altering their view of reality to something that isn't there, that is convenient for you. And when you add the drugs into the mix, especially their pacifying effects, I don't know. Like, I don't want to put on a big tinfoil hat and say, like, the government's behind, you know, like my coworkers doing edibles on weekends. Like, that sounds silly. But we would be naive to think that there aren't multiple reasons all of these things happen. To bring it all back to the opioid epidemic, these people are not stupid. They have the best doctors, the best researchers, all the money in the world at their disposal. They know precisely what every effect of these things are. And they put them into society anyway. In our period, when profit is secondary to speculation, that gives me pause.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, 100%. Planning, which has happened through, as Noah and I have written about extensively, and I have an essay I've been working on for over a year that'll be in Red America soon. The credit system and the stock market, which are what two of the three things that my essay focuses on, along with the paper banknote. The development of the stock market and the credit system has led to more central planning and more speculation, which is like an anarchic form of central planning, like basically gambling with the economy. But it gives them more control over what what commodities go out, yeah, and they can put more thought into the use value of those commodities. But to go back to something you said, Noah, about MK Ultra doctors said they could never like control people's brains, so they could like use a controller to make them do whatever they wanted, which was what they ultimately wanted to do. But what's interesting, to go back to Tom O'Neill's book Chaos, about Charles Manson, was that with specific people, mostly being like downtrodden people, hippies and drug addicts who had run away from home because they hated their parents and didn't have any money, Charles Manson was able to do what the MK Ultra project was all about. And for those who haven't read that book yet, he was absolutely part of MK Ultra. He was going to a psychological clinic multiple times a month where MK Ultra doctors were working and doing MK Ultra research. He was in San Francisco, the heart of or around San Francisco, the heart of where MK Ultra happened and the hippie psychedelic movement. There's all but complete proof. He was almost arrested and put in prison many times, but he would always get let off under weird circumstances. Telltale sign that somebody is a CIA asset. But basically, what his cult was exactly what the goals of MK Ultra were. He had total control of these people to the point where he could send them into a house to kill a bunch of people or whatever, get them to do whatever he wanted. So, in a way, they did find a way to control people's brains within a specific, scenario and specific conditions and with a specific individual. So creepy, too.
A while ago, not to get off on like a tear about it, but a while ago, I remember watching an interview with Zizek, and I hate Zizek, right? Like, it is what it is, but he says some interesting things, and he was talking about how he has friends in intelligence agencies, obviously, right, from his time back in the old country, and he was saying that modern like people think that mind control is like, if you're being mind controlled, you are in your body and you feel someone else from outside it controlling it, right? Like you can't, like if Eddie were controlling my mind, he would say like, Noah, raise your right arm, and I'd raise my right arm.
It worked.
Well, good. Well, now we know it works, right?
What I wanted you to do.
All the drugs. But no, I don't do any drugs.
I was the one who got Noah hooked on drugs in his 20s. It was an MK Ultra experiment. That's why it works for Midwestern Marx for free. Sorry. That's funny.
And so Zizek was saying that that's how you expect it to be. Like Eddie says, raise my arm, I raise my arm, right? But the way it actually works and what they're looking into these days is altering the sort of electrical pulses in your brain, right? So that the thought actually seems to occur to you naturally. Right? And that's what's really scary about
some Edward Bernays shit.
Yeah. Like, well, no. More like if someone were like altering your brainwaves, and it's, a combination of drugs and suggestion and blah, blah, blah. But the thought that they're leading to, actually, you believe it's your thought. You own it. It's an organic product of your mind, even though it was implanted in you.
Isn't that part of what Edward Bernays talked about with the media, was getting people to believe that they've come to these conclusions on their own? And I mean, that's exactly how it works. I remember when I first started studying the DPRK, being so mind blown. I was like, the more I learned about it, I'm like, well, why was I so convinced that these guys were evil? What evidence was I even working off of? I was so confident and assured of my position that the DPRK was this evil totalitarian dictatorship. And it's the same way with people when you talk to them about the DPRK. Mm-hmm. And then you start to investigate it and be like, well, why do you think that? And they're like, well, basically just the media told me so. Haven't you seen The Interview, that Seth Rogen movie? And there's no actual substantial evidence. And once you start digging into that substantial evidence, like, holy shit, I was totally convinced that these guys were evil, and I thought I came to that conclusion on my own. It was artificially implanted in my brain, and it's completely divorced from the material reality.
Mainstream media is, I think often we take for granted that people don't trust mainstream media. But I think we need to really attack that a lot harder than we do sometimes, because what I find is people can say they don't trust mainstream media, but when it comes down to it, in practice, on a given issue, they often do, right? Like, they only don't trust it in abstract, like when they think about this vague thing called mainstream media. But every time they look at something, or something is sort of in the background given to you, and that's really how a lot of the propaganda works. Like, you
through
see
entertainment media is
precisely
a big way. And people think that's conspiracy if you say the Marvel movies are propaganda. Now they kind of see it because they're woke, but like, it's like they're also military propaganda and working with the actual military to make movies.
So much of it is anti-communist propaganda. So much of it. And it's like given to you as part of background that has nothing to do with the story or what's going on with the heroes or whatever, but it's implanted in your mind, and that's on purpose.
Yes, I think this is so interesting. I talk about this all the time, how angry the U.S. gets about travel vloggers or just vloggers who are from China or the DPRK. And they call it propaganda, and they do these hit pieces about how the government is, forcing them to do this. There was like this little girl, or like, not a little girl, but like a young woman or a, teenage girl. I don't know how old she was, but she was making vlogs about her life in the DPRK. And there were like 20 mainstream media articles talking about how she's a puppet of Kim Jong-un and shit. Like just showing like a live feed of what's going on the ground in the DPRK is enough to blow away all this propaganda, which, as Noah just said, works in the abstract. Or, people condemn the mainstream media in the abstract, but they have this abstracted idea of what these other countries are like, which comes straight from the mainstream media. And, it's the same thing. I remember Philip DeFranco, that jackass who's on TikTok, which is why I hate him so much, because he's a neoliberal propagandist. He made a huge controversy out of this vlogger just going to the DPRK and being like, hey, maybe these people aren't aliens. Maybe we should have empathy for them, you know. And Phil was like, turned it into this big controversy. Like, this is such an ethical conundrum. Should we go to other countries and show that they're just human beings? Or should we just be racist bots?
Wow, that is crazy to me. And it strikes me as sad that people are so easily led into believing cartoons. Like we all were. You know, I grew up in a pro-Soviet household, and even I didn't really have an accurate view of free Korea, you know? It's amazing to me that it's just so easily believed because of the power of institutions and big money behind it. That's really all there is to do behind it, you know? I don't know.
Yeah. Marxist Leninists have evolved on some of those positions when it comes to like China, or even Palestine, you know.
Oh yeah. Oh, my family were super anti-China.
Yeah, right, because of the split and you know, with Palestine, like labor Zionism was able to trick people, and the Soviets didn't know what was going on until later on. So you have them voting for Israeli statehood in 1948 through whatever international or whatever organization, I can't think of the name of it, dealt with like UN relations and stuff like that. And then
the League of Nations, right?
I don't know what it was. No, it was some like Soviet particular body, like within the government, like the Department of Foreign Affairs.
Soviet of Nations. Oh, yeah. I think it was just the foreign ministry, honestly.
Yeah, the Soviet Foreign Ministry, that's what it was. Yeah, and then Stalin researched it, and you know they learned more about it and what was going on, and came out against it. Not as hard as like China, but anyways, the Marxist-Leninists have evolved on these issues, and like our evolution as Marxist theorists has been completely stunted in the West because of postmodernism and the Congress for Cultural Freedom. That's why I get so excited about Red America and advancing actual Marxist-Leninist scholarship. But anyways, somebody earlier said Charles Manson's music is bad. And I mean, I mostly agree, but like the MK Ultra project did give us one thing. You should listen to this. This is Charles Manson's best song. It's not as bad as I thought it was gonna be. Come on. I mean, I know he was an MK Ultra demon, but he made one good song. So
you know, he was obsessed with the Beach Boys.
Well, he was friends with one of them.
Yeah,
he knew one of them like very well.
One of the Wilson brothers, I forget which one.
Yes, they like hung out together, and then that was one of the things that was covered up in the Bugliosi trial. Was that he was such good friends with like high up people in Hollywood, including the Beach Boys, who were also connected to this shit.
Mm-hmm. The Beach Boys thought like they were told they were going to be this like big like basically like a rival of the Beatles, and they asked the Beatles about them, and the Beatles had no idea who they were, which I think is kind of funny.
I grew up learning that they were the Beatles' rivals. It was kind of like a industry plant.
Yeah, it definitely was. By the way, speaking of Brian Wilson, it's funny that that's who it was. I've been doing these stupid little like true stories of Noah lately, right? And I did one where the ghost of Brian Wilson came to me. By the way, he's not dead.
Yeah, that one's true though. I was there. It happened.
Well, yeah, obviously you were there, but like people got very, very, very upset, saying like, dude, the Beach Boys would not talk to you. This is a lie. I'm like, well, first, it's about a ghost. Second, it's about a ghost of a guy that's not dead. I don't understand I don't know.
Well, it's because I commented and said this is real. I was there. It happened. So they believe that it actually happened, I think.
Look, every one of those is super.
Based. Yeah, it was Dennis Wilson, not Brian. I thought so. I thought it was.
Okay.
Yeah, same shit though.
Anyway, yeah, that's it.
That's all we got for today. Thanks for
That's
joining, y'all. To let you know what's coming up, patreon.com/MidwesternMarks. Best way to support us. acp.us and ACP Dono link if you want to get involved. Of course, we encourage everybody to do that. Thank you to all our super chatters and Michelle, who's a 4-month member. Appreciate all our members. Everybody who hung out and asked questions today. Looks like we got 7 super chats, including a big 25er. Thank you all for that. Still working on saving up money for a new computer. But other than that, on Wednesday, we will have the Eddie Liger Power Hour. I haven't decided what I'm doing it on yet, but it should be a good show. Then Carlos's The Cave will come out Friday, I believe. Hopefully we'll have a chance to do Midwestern Manifesto this weekend. I don't know, because once again, I have to travel 5 hours total for a wrestling tournament for the 3rd week in a row. But after that, I'll have a little bit of free time. And then
one thing.
Yes.
Tuesday, tomorrow.
Oh, RBN tomorrow, probably at 5. We're seeing if they can move it a little earlier, but if not, I'm just gonna move my schedule around or get somebody else to do something for me. So I'll be there at 5, but around 5 in the afternoon, give or take, and that'll be really fun. I'm excited to talk to Nick and all them. And then on Monday of next week, Noah and I will be doing his call-in show together, which is going to be badass. So,
my cat will be back home.
Absolutely not. He will be a lampshade by then. Also, make sure to follow us on Twitter and let us know what you want to see in the next show. But that's all for me.
Yeah. Have a great week, everybody, or day, or whatever it is. Have a great one of them. See ya.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken, now they must give. And end the vanity of nations. We've but one earth on which to live. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama, in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields. When we fight, provoked by their aggression, let us be inspired by life and love. passion.